thought I'd start off just showing a typical setup that I use. And I wanted to do kind of a beginner thing for the first one. So I have a empty Cantabile ready to start from scratch that we could go through. But I mean, this is old hat for you, I take it. Is it? Do you need the new stuff,
Uh,
Torsten?
I would really like to see things from scratch again,
Okay.
because I do believe that I learn a lot from taking a few steps back and start to think about how was it I actually started working on these things. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
I
I do that for
agree.
free.
I
Yeah.
agree. I also think that it's useful to start from scratch, even if maybe something I will know already. But in any case, no, never
Okay.
mind.
Okay. Well, let's do a little tour of my current page right now, then, for starters, and we'll just get started because it's been 12:35, and I'm sorry I didn't know that I could start a link, put the link up like last week for this thing. And so I'll do that from now on. I'll have it up there well in advance of the webinars. I'll schedule up a whole bunch of them. All right, let me share my screen then and bring up Cantabile. Okay, you see that okay? And
Okay.
can you hear the piano?
It
Slightly.
seems that I hear it from a microphone, something like
Oh,
that.
okay. So
Very distant. Very
let
distant.
me channel my voice meter. Let's make some noise and see if I just have to scroll through another channel. Okay. At least it's coming that way. There it is. It's 1314. You should be able to hear it right about now.
Still distant. Oh, okay, not better.
Did you hear it?
Yeah, that helped.
Okay. So that's what it was. I had this set to the wrong channel for my channel insert. Correct? There you go. Documentation rocks. So does trial and error and raw force. Okay, there we go. Yeah, brute force always does something. Okay, so way I have this set up, and you should be able to hear that. And perhaps you're hearing my microphone too. In fact, look at that. My microphone's sitting behind my head. Sorry about that. I must have knocked it when I was, whoa, let's see, where is this? Okay. I've got a few different things coming in. I got my main keyboard. This is the complete control going to massive. I've got an MPK 249 on my left going to the Xenology. And I've got a hardware synth plugged into an old Korg Poly 800 that I'm just using as a controller. So there's no patches loaded into it or anything. And so I just figured I'd show at least 4. I typically have 8 connected in here. But and then I have my various things here. The ESQM, I have a cartridge and it has a left and right switch. You know, you can switch it to 2 different cartridge inputs. And so that's basically typical hardware. The Mac MIDI is going out to the out, and then I've got an audio input set up to also come to rack stereo out. And out of there, it goes to the processing rack. Now my processing rack, I've got it so that I have 2 inputs. I've got a no reverb version, bypass reverb, and that I made by creating ports. And I've got the regular rack stereo in. because a lot of times you don't need to go to the reverbs. And the reverbs rack I've uploaded to Cantabile, and anybody can take this and tear out the pieces that they don't have and add, just do replace plugin and add in what they have. And you see I've got all the reverbs that I own brought in here, and then I use states to switch between the different reverbs. So this way it's a reverbs rack that I can, because it's embedded, I can throw it anywhere and always have bring up any choice of reverbs and try out different reverbs just by selecting from here, because these are all in the states. Pretty neat. And because it's all the others are turned off, only the one that I'm using is turned on, see? And so it takes up no extra weight, because when they're ones that are off are literally unloaded. They're not just suspended. So that way I can have this huge bevy of things. And I've done that with a couple of other racks. Like I've got a drop down. Well, are you all familiar with Native Instruments Reactor?
No.
Well, Native Instruments makes it. It's one of their oldest plugins. I think it started their whole company was this modular thing that you could create your own synthesizers with, called Reactor, and it came with all these blocks that you could wire together and make a synth, and then create a front end for it. And they've created a whole bunch of things. Well, them and the community have created a whole bunch of different synths. And the nice thing about them is that the drop downs work. You get the listing of the patches in those. And those seem to be rare as hen's teeth, as they say, where you get the patch list in here. Like where these, I had to literally add these as states, and like same thing with my ESQ. I literally typed in these patches as states in order to be able to switch between them. So as you see, there's different states of the different patches. And they're using bindings to call up the thing by a simple, number call.
I'm not sure I understand what the ESQ is doing.
Oh, ESQ is a hardware synth from Ensoniq.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a hardware synth. Okay.
It's a hardware synth, yeah. And so you always have to do something like this to bring hardware synth patches in, because we don't have MIDI name functionality, so you can't just create a patch list using something like MIDI Quest and bring it in. There's only a few programs that let you do that anywhere, like Digital Performer and stuff. But
so you integrated the hardware synth in your Cantabile setup in this way.
No, actually, I manually typed these in.
Okay.
I created states and manually typed them in, and then the bindings go just to the different states in that. Oops, I'm in the wrong bindings. Here we go. This one. So the bindings simply unload. When I load the state, it sends the program change.
Yeah, okay.
So I go to 14.
So
it just sends a 14.
With the Cantabile.
Yep. And it's very simple, a one-liner. It simply makes it so when I select the state, it simply sends the program change out, the output, to the correct channel. So it's nice and simple. But that gives me access to all of my patches. Now, I did have to manually type them in, but I've only got one cartridge, and I don't change it very often. And I have one cartridge with two different patch lists in it, so I had to do it again for the left, switch left. This way you have a switch right and a switch left. And I did it, hand entered them all for the switch left as well. So I got show notes up here. There we go. Maybe I should have put some show notes down. Okay, so that's I have just headphone volume. I have an out to headphones that I just go to this little rack just so I could bind to this thing and be able to control my volume for my headphones. Very useful. So that's pretty much the gist of a basic kind of a typical performance setup I've got. And I simply, blow it up and just add elements to that basic concept. But I wanted you to be able to see what I did with the hardware, and I might do a webinar where I create some hardware things, find out what the patches are, but mostly all I did was look over at my machine and see what they called patch 5 and typed it in as a state name and sent that number through the binding. So anyway, that's that. All right. So who wants to go through the startup thing now? I was going to run a startup right from the very scratch beginning and show the various things. So let me turn this off and share my screen. And I'm just going to share the whole screen, I guess. That's probably the most kosher way to do this. Let's see. All righty, share screen. Full screen. All righty. And let me know if this comes up. All right, you see that?
Yes.
The select license page. So this is what happens when you first install Cantabile, and I'm doing Performer, so I'm going to use that. And then I'm going to just click Next, and okay, Machine Mark III is not there, of course not. Let's get my Mo2. And next, and so here we're walking through the audio driver selection. As you see, it already recognized me. I'd already signed in. And this is where it starts asking for your inputs. And so you got your audio ports, and I have that special audio port just for the ESQ, for instance. And they give you a microphone input and stuff like that here. Now I can add them all now. Stereo input port, and give it a name. Or I can always go back and do that kind of stuff later. Okie doke. And then you got MIDI ports. So I'll go ahead and add a few of those right now. I got input port, and I'll add my complete control. This is the main. This is an S88. And I'm not doing any filtering at the moment, but I was going to show how I would do filtering, and create another one for, this is the S49. I'll go ahead and add the poly and the MPK 249. So the poly is coming into the MPK 249 through its MIDI input on the back. Oops. You need that, don't you? The reason I wanted to show the poly is that it's a great use for like an antique that you have sitting around the house, never using, and make it into a controller. Why not? And that one's really old because it doesn't even have pressure, or I don't even think it has velocity. But it's great for things like organ sounds and when you're in performance, just for getting strings out and stuff like that. Now, here's the external synth, would be my ESQ. I could go ahead and edit that and send it out to MIDI 3 and do that kind of stuff. But I will abstain from going too crazy here and just get a couple keyboards set up. Now I've got to add my VST, and that would be on my E drive. And let's see what else. Steinberg. And, oh, browse. That's what I need. Okie dokie. And browse to my E drive. Program files. Steinberg. This is actually not the machine I use when I'm performing. This is the one I use for doing videos and stuff like that. So this is a good choice because this is all raw. And finally, I usually do simply do the VST3s. If I'm going to use a VST3, I keep it local. I have it on both machines. And I could go find my presets and banks folder. It's typically on C drive, but in this case, I've got it on the bulk of them on my E drive. I believe in here. Here we are. Presets and banks. Oh, it's not in here. Well, I'm not going to worry about that for the moment. Just say it's there. Okay. It is. Oh, sure is. Look at this. Get that out of there. Oop. Okay. Of course, because it already had a main keyboard yelling at me. All right. So I got that. I got that. And let's finish. Now remember, this is all just the initial setup that it forces you to go through. I could have ignored all of that and set it all up in options later on, which is actually usually what I do. So now that we're doing the scan of a million different things, let's stop the share for a second. And because watching a progress meter is probably one of the most maddening things I can imagine having to do. So I'm going to make you have to watch a progress meter. And but anybody got any questions so far about anything or want me to show anything?
One quick question.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like your songs were not specifically songs, but more like hardware setup, saying that this one is for piano, this is the synth setup. Is that correctly understood? I looked at your set list.
Oh, the set list. In the other one,
Yes.
I created songs that had, mostly for me just to practice, not for necessarily for performance or for trying out different combos of things. So I would set up songs that just simply would be, this would be a bunch of pianos, so I can try them in combination with a certain plugin. That's more or less my, just sit down and play, not necessarily perform when I'm composing. Because I do use Cantabile a lot for recording, and that's a feature I really love about it, is the recording thing. I think it's one of the features that's kind of underappreciated, is just how useful it can be as a recorder, because it'll start and stop automatically. It'll start from just an audio sound source or a MIDI. It'll stop after a certain number of seconds and create a new recording out of that. So you never have to lose anything. You can be musing and thinking about things. I use Digital Performer for my DAW, and it's nice that it has the retroactive MIDI, in that if I play something and I didn't have it running, I can go in and I can paste the retroactive MIDI, whatever MIDI it received, I can paste that into a track. But it doesn't catch everything. And I've got a multi-keyboard setup, and I'm always using a multi-keyboard setup, and for different instruments. So if I'm coming up with an idea and I got two hands going, Cantabile's automatically capturing all of the idea with both hands, both keyboards. And if I switch to a different keyboard, it's already got it. It's grabbing it all the minute it starts recording. And I've got it, so I'm using the fake outputs in order to create channels for the VSTs. I'll show you that, in fact, right now. Let me, because that's probably what I'm going to be doing next.
Do you start recording just when you feel that you have something interesting, or do you record everything that you are using, that you are playing along?
Yeah, I'll just leave it in automatic record and let it grab
So
things.
everything that you play is recorded.
Mm-hmm. But it's separated. So if I don't like something, I simply unpin it and it gets deleted in 7 days or something anyway. And I have it so it automatically pins anything I record, and then I just go and undo the pin. When you're doing VST instruments, in the output section, you simply create these fake channels that you don't even assign. You don't assign them to anything, but you just give it a name, basically. And then those appear in the recording dialog that you can select and check to receive those. So you just simply put them as you put stereo out of one of your VSTs and send it to this dummy output. But the recorder captures that dummy output. So that way you can record your VSTs. And you can give these as fake outputs names. You can name them for the VST. I just call them output 1, output 2, up to output 12, typically. And output 10 is always a reverb output. If you noticed in my reverbs rack, I had it going, its output went out to a channel output 10. And I always use that to capture the overall reverb. So, okay,
so
let's...
The reverb is just wet sound, no dry sound for the reverb. So you can record the reverb just the reverb, no dry sound.
Right, and it records as a separate channel in a broadcast wave file. Now, busting up that broadcast wave file is not trivial. I have to use Audacity to break it up and combine the stereo. It comes in all its mono channels, and use Audacity to combine them into stereo, and then output them using a multiple export, and it creates your stems. And then you can bring your stems into a DAW. Some DAWs will import the broadcast wave files directly. Harrison's Mixbus does so. Digital Performer does not, so I have to create the stems for that. Samplitude, same thing. I got to create stems for that if I'm using Samplitude. Just to get back to a little more discussion about that recording and splitting it up, is everyone familiar with Audacity? It's a free piece of software. It's open source. Yeah, Audacity is really wonderful. I definitely going to dedicate a webinar to recording and breaking up the files into stems. There's a couple of gotchas there. When you're doing the setup to record, you definitely want to be in one of those musical times that were recently added so that it syncs with your metronome. Back in the original Cantabile, the MIDI was pretty much just coming in as timeless. It had no timestamp on it, so it had no relationship to the metronome. And consequently, because it had no time, what they call a conductor track in Digital Performer, it was, there we go. It was in its own world, and anything that involved sync, like my wave station patches that I had synced to the metronome, for instance, became pretty much impossible to use as MIDI. I had to use the audio version. Okay, well, now we have this. Let's go ahead in there, and I'll show you quickly in options. Audio ports. And this is where I would add a stereo output port. I would call it output 1. And that's all I have to do. And you notice it's unassigned. Well, you don't need to assign it. Just forget assigning it. Leave it just like that. And I wonder what I had to change. Okay. So now if I look and okay, got it. I look in recording, there's output 1 and I can check it. So let's bring in a root, main keyboard, and better add an object, eh? Do addictive keys and point to that. All right, I don't know how you heard that exactly. I'm pretty sure I have to point to SPDIF now. Oh, I didn't add SPDIF. Oh well. Okay, so because it's a VST, to get this recorded, I can send it to output 1. And there we go. Now, when I check this VST, I got to load a recording set. Oh, I guess I got to save one. Isn't that interesting? Set as default. Isn't that something? I have to save it first. I did not know that. New. There we go. Save it there. And now it'll let me. Okay. So that's really nice. And I can use this port right there so that it monitors the audio. And that way it'll start an automatic recording if I have this clicked. Just right click and say auto record. And now the audio from that will start the recording. And it's kind of cool because it doesn't even have to be MIDI input. It could be a microphone that starts your recording. So let's see. Let's add another root. And that could go to the external synth, for instance. But let's add another object. Absent 5 stereo. Now at least it's got stereo out. And stereo out to port 2. So now these are 2 VSTs that I can record. No, I guess not. I don't have these ports, so of course I don't have these ports. Oh, well, there's a great trick I can show you. As you know, in that earlier version, I did have all these ports. They were all nice and neat, and all of these were sitting in there, right in here. Now, say I already had a nice setup, and I'd love to be able to use that setup. So this is Cantabile Performer Lessons, okay, is the name of this. Now say I want to get all of my ports, and I already had a nice setup. Let's go ahead and close this for a second. Make sure I can get back to it. Sure, change it. New song. Best song. And get out of there. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into the folder structure here and go to my drive C, to my users, and into app data. I think it's roaming. We'll go to 10. Oh, no, it's not roaming. It is local. Top 10 software. And here you see I've got setups that already exist. And there's Cantabile Performer Lessons that we've been playing around with. Okay? And here's another one. And this one is the one right here, I believe. In my, Cantabile 3. So I can go into this folder and I can get things like my background rack, my plugins, and my settings. Let's get the most recent one. And there it is. And the settings, Jace. Oh, that's what I want. I don't want to need this. It's backup. Okay, so this is from today. And so I've got the settings, my plugins, and my background rack. And I right click and I copy. Now I go into this one that I had been making from scratch. And I just go ahead and paste these in and right over these others. And I say replace them. Bye-bye. Everything's now up to date. So now when I start this new one, scanning doesn't take any time at all because it's already scanned. These are already part of the scanned list. And look, it's already loading in a song, the song that it had before, previous song. So I can just remove these, just have a fresh start. And in a second, we'll take a look at the, and here's Zenology taking its sweet time, you see, always takes forever. Okie dokie. So now you see in options, by golly, if I don't have all of those assignments that took me so long to figure out, and all of those out channel 8, out channel 7, out channel 6, all those unassigned dummies for recording, and my ADATs and all that stuff that I normally would have to look up and go crazy figuring it out, it's all just back. And so this entire setup now works. And so I can go to my set list and I can just take out these things if I want to start from scratch and start from scratch. But I've got all of my assignments are already there. So, which is a very nice thing. And this is, again, we're in Cantabile Performers lessons. And so I can go and create a new set list and simply start over right here. How's that for a trick? Is that a good enough trick? To me, that's been one of the biggest time savers. It's really nice being able to get the setup right there, have all my keyboards all ready to go. Ooh, I gotta turn that one down. Now, another thing I like to show real quick in my outputs is the output to 7/8 is just an analog output out of one controller that goes to the other. Goes to my other computer. Another, well, it's a Motu 828 on the main computer. And then I've got an ultralight on the second computer where you have my capture card and I run OBS because I'm streaming right now via Zoom, and I probably should be controlling my output for Zoom too the same way. But I found that if you don't go to -12 on these inputs, the outputs, when you're going into a stream, it overloads very, very easily in a stream. I'm streaming to YouTube typically. I've heard that in Twitch, it's the same thing. Now, with all this COVID nonsense, I know a lot of people are very frustrated about not being able to perform. But streaming is really a great opportunity that, at least as individuals, we can do streaming concerts. And once you get the hang of it, you could bring other instruments in, even live, like people that play acoustic guitar or electric guitar. You could bring them into your Cantabile setup and really get some mileage and have a full-blown concert performance that you're doing as a live stream. And that's all really very possible using this software. But if you're doing live stream, just so you know, that -12 dB you want to have for the stream output, because otherwise it'll distort very easily. I probably should be doing the same thing for this Zoom program. And actually, I do have it turned down a little bit in voice meter, because that's how Zoom is getting the output via voice meter. But yeah, so that's another little tip there. And I'm not sure if you're hearing. Is that coming through the voice meter? Yeah? Okay. Not through the mic.
Actually, Terry, it sounds like sounds is going through the microphone instead
Yeah,
of
that might
directly
be.
into the
That
stream.
one I think is. No, it's coming into the mic, but it should be getting out to your stream there. Let me just double check.
It seems like
Yes,
it's
yes.
coming to us from the microphone instead of directly.
Well, I'm getting a microphone from voice meter. And so here, I'll mute my mic and make some noise. There, did you hear that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good.
It's
So
just that I was not sure that it was going directly instead of through your room, because maybe because there's so much reverb that.
yes, I'm a reverb maniac. That's a lexicon. So if I take off the reverb rack and just turn it off, you hear pretty raw. So, but that shows that that's working. Yeah, I tend when I'm just jamming by myself, I tend to be a lush reverb fanatic, and that's Lex Chambers, you can see, which gets pretty lush. So, but the output I'm using, I've got the B output, and I've got it just set to normal. I probably, to be sane about this, I probably should be turning that down 12 to -12. So let me know if did you hear that the same way as before?
Oh, I can't hear the sound.
Okay, now you do.
That's coming back.
Yes, okay, good. So I'm on the right channel. So I really should be turning that one down as well, and I'll show you where I do that. You do that right here. This is the A. You see you have the two B1 and B2, and that's B1 and B2 it's going out. So it's actually B1 is going to zoom, and actually I'm not using B2. I'm outputting to my recording through one of the regular hardware outputs. But the best thing to do, the best practice, is to be cut, if you're streaming via Zoom or whatever, is to cut this down to about -12. Then you never have to worry about an overload of the stream. Okay? So, it may not be as loud, but you don't want to have to worry about the overloads. My first concert I did this year, I did not realize I had an organ patch going that was really, really pushing that poor system. And it sounded fine on my end, but the poor YouTube audience was getting blasted by it. And it was all, so I realized after that, yes, there's a rule of thumb to always have -12 dB for streams. Okay, let's see. Well, let's see, 123. I think we're just about to be kicked off because I only made it to be 115, and it gives you a few extra minutes. So let's, do you have any quick questions? Because, I said it, that's right, I said it for an hour, 15 minutes. So we're good, we're good. Still, any questions in this broadly disconnected, random webinar this week? There's webinar 1 for you. But covered quite a few strange things. Oh, Doug, I can't hardly hear you.
Closer to the mic. I have a question. I noticed you have ARC.
Yes.
Sometime that'd be interesting to see how you're using that. I bought it. I found it useful.
Yeah, I just finally upgraded to the ARC3, and I like it a lot better. It's, some people like some aspects of ARC2 better, but ARC3, an easier setup. It was 3 layers, 3 heights. You had like your height 6 inches below, 6 inches above, and then in the positions. And it's, well, the results have been really nice for me, and I can sure hear it when I can.
Equalizer for everybody else.
What the ARC really does a good job at canceling out those room resonances and phase issues. So it gives me a bit of room to move my head around, and I'm not getting any combing or anything like that. It's somehow miraculously pulls that off. So
I've used it for 2 setups, one at a mixing desk, and then the other one is for E drums, and I made that one really wide. You know, that one where people are supposedly sitting behind you. And so I did it backwards, so if a guitar player is out in front of the drums, you know, they sound more even than and then they still sound okay when you're near the speakers. So it works pretty well.
Yeah, it's amazing. They can make it so that it works for you and the people sitting on the couch behind you. For goodness sake.
Yeah, that part works.
Yeah, it's a pretty impressive piece of software. That and well, a lot of their stuff is good.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, one thing I was going to go over, since we have a little time, I don't know if you want to go look at the setup I've got for my pedal going to my Leslie, but that's kind of a useful thing for me to show. So why don't I go ahead and show that? Why not? Yep. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to get that out of the way, and I'm going to add rotary. Oops. Rotary 60 from UVI. It's a nice little Leslie speaker. And
way back when this won the shootout.
Huh?
Early on, when Corky was doing the shootout with the Leslie emulations, this one won.
Yes, it's really impressive. And you know, let's see, what am I going to use for? How about modular? Believe it or not, you're going to freak out. This is almost insane, but I love the organ patches in Arturia's Modular 3. Totally doesn't make any sense at all. But to me, it's just fantastic. So let me go ahead and I'm going to hook up my complete control and point it to that instead. And send its output over to rotary. And give this an output. And I'll just send it to my processing rack. I'll bypass the reverb. And of course, because unlike that, gotta make it recordable, right? Okay, so one of the things that happens here is that you've got this break and it can be MIDI assigned. Okay, and you got all these CCs. Whoa! But what CC am I actually getting here? Well, it will auto sense. Let me make sure I got my Behringer on. I've got the pedal board from Behringer down here, but I have to add it. So I have to add it, and I got to send it over to Rotary. So now Rotary can see this, and let me go take a look at my settings. 1 second. Behringer. Port 8, channel 6. That's why. It's no longer on channel 6. So I copied some old settings. Now you're talking. So now it responds. And now I can use my pedal. So pretty much any pedal you can, depending on what it's going through, like I used to use my Wave Stations pedal that old orange thing, the EXP2. I never had much use for it till Cantabile. Now I can route it into things like this or anything, and be able to switch my.
Are you using a pedal
Yeah, I'm using
or buttons?
a Behringer FCB 1010. That
Right. There's two pedals on it, and then there's a lot of foot switches.
that's right.
That's why I'm curious. Is it foot switch that you're hitting, or
No, we're using a
pedal?
pedal because I
Okay.
like having the brake option.
Right. So that's midway, isn't it?
Huh?
That's midway pressing the pedal down, I
Exactly.
guess.
Midway. Yeah, halfway,
Okay.
half pedal.
Is it the VST which interprets the controller, or did you set some filter in in Cantabile?
I didn't
Is it
filter
rotary
anything.
which
No, I could have filtered it, but I
Okay,
didn't
but in
have
any
to.
case, it's rotary which selects the position depending on the value of the foot of the pedal,
Yeah,
not
this
Yeah,
with this
this one's
particular plugin,
unfortunate.
Okay.
let's say I do this again, I do the other pedal. Now you'll see it's. Oop, I went and touched the other
You
one.
don't need any particular setup in Cantabile to make it work.
Right. See, here's this first pedal is 27, and the second pedal is 1. And so whichever pedal I move, rotary will pick up on it. But I got to send the whole board. I could use the foot switches too, if I wanted to use those. But I just I got too darn many pedals in my house here, and I got to use them. So, and this one, it happens to be right underneath the main keyboard. Now, my actual organ setup is usually over to my right. It's 261, 272. It's a wave station and a Kawai K5000S, and so I get more keys. 61, I guess, yeah. And so that's my having them one above the other, so I have a full organ keyboard setup, and that's when I use the FCB coming from the wave station. I have a special routing for wave station. It's just controllers, and so that would, if I sent that to rotary, I could move it, and now that's the pedal that's controlling it. It's my old FCB2. The first pedal, AXP2, I mean. The very first pedal I ever bought back in, what, it's, geez, 92. But it's a totally non-standard pedal, so it doesn't really work with anything but the wave station. But finally, I have an application for it, and so it's great for when I'm doing it at the organ setup, which is the two keyboards to my right. Then I've got that available. So that's how that can be done. Now, the wave station controllers thing is a filtered doodad. It filtered out. I'll show you. There it is. Wave station controllers, and it's got filters, which took out. I did suppress and took out program change. I took out notes and controllers, and reassigned the CC4, which is the foot pedal, which is how it comes into the wave station, and reassigned it to CC1. So that's how I got away with that. This filters section is really, really remarkable, though. I mean, I must say, the number of things that you can add is insane, and we really should probably send 2 or 3 webinars just going through this list of things that you can do with the filters for any input.
That'd be great. Early on, I gave up on pedal craziness because it kept, because I didn't know how to filter.
Yeah. The
So,
filtration becomes pretty essential, doesn't it?
yeah.
So does suppress. In fact, this shouldn't actually be suppressed. This should actually even allow no notes because it's supposed to be controllers only for this particular thing. So so that makes it so that none of the notes work in this wave station controllers thing. And for the keyboard, then I have the opposite arrangement where I've suppressed all the CCs except 4. And I don't suppress any notes. I do allow my keyboard, my pedal, but it really shouldn't even do that since I'm supposed to be keyboard only in this. But I must have had a reason for adding it one day and just never changed it back. And then I got the wave station. Everything just doesn't filter anything. I also have a program change. There's a button input on the Kawai that will output a on channel 12, I think CC12, and it'll output from a push button. It'll output this signal on 12, 10 or 127, and I used that as a program change thing to and it suppressed the notes, and then I mapped this controller 12 to program change on program 1. So that allowed me to use an output that's really an oddball, weird output that only the Kawai K5000S ever had that I've ever seen, and be able to use it as a program change button. So again, this is because we got so darn many cool things that we can add here. It's like you just start staring at this list thinking, what can I do with this? Sticky note, that's a recent addition, and that would actually be an even better use for that particular thing for me than using it to change programs, because I typically actually don't change programs using anything but Cantabile. I use the next state or next song to change programs, right? And it sends it out to my things. So it might be a better use for that little button to use Sticky Note, because Sticky Note is super useful. That's been around, about 6 months or so?
What's the problem with really going crazy on a Hammond style playing, right? And people were getting stuck notes from
That's from doing huge. That's from doing huge sweeps. Yeah.
Yeah.
That hasn't been happening to me. I haven't had the issue. What Sticky Note does is whatever notes you've just been holding down, you engage Sticky Note, and those notes stay held down till you push the button again. So it's really great. Like if you're doing something, you want this high note to just stay there and hover while you're playing below it. You hold that note, hit the button, and now it stays stuck while you're playing the others.
Is it just like the hold button on some keyboards?
Yeah, it's like similar to a hold button, I guess you could say. I like a hold button. But
I was watching someone who played a Hammond with this band Wilco, and he was using fishing weights.
Exactly. This is exactly what this addressed. We had a whole discussion with Corky and I and a few others talking about, getting around using weights and, what was it? Matchbooks and all kinds of different things to hold the key down.
Someone used knives to do that.
Yes, knives. And you would put two or three of them down, and then you'd be playing and they'd fall off.
It was very impressive, eh?
So this is the equivalent to your knives and weights and stuff like that. Sticky notes, great thing.
If you assign that to a button on your FCB 10101, you could get it so like a certain note you hit, then you press that button you assigned a sticky note, and it would just hold.
It will
that
just
note,
hold
or-
until you released
Yeah.
it. And just that note. So
Right.
so it's a lot like a
Notes,
sustain.
notes, the notes off, sorry, are ignored.
Yes.
When you play, okay, until you press the magic key, which is the release key.
Yep. Or press the key again, maybe. I forget exactly what it was to get rid of it.
I have to
Yeah, that would be
check it
fun to
out.
play around with. I
That's
want to get an SCP 10101. I've had it. I've kind of been looking around on eBay.
It's
You know.
useful for pads. For you build this carpet and you keep it on and you play with other keyboard. So it's useful. Okay.
Yeah, and I do it a lot for things like on the Wave Station. It's got these things, one finger wonders type things, and so sometimes I use the sustain pedal reversed, so I just hit a chord on that keyboard and it continues. But for things like organ playing and stuff, and some other synths, where they have
Also to keep
that motion aspect where it's always interesting, even though it's a drone. But it's constantly interesting, or where it's an arpeggiator.
well, you can use an arpeggiator in that way.
Yeah.
You keep it going.
Right.
You play something else.
Yep, and especially
So what-
just the notes you want to continue going would be part of the arpeggiator, and
Yeah.
where it doesn't mess with
What-
your others.
One note held on a hand and totally changes all the other sounds. It's amazing.
Really, just by
Yeah,
holding.
like if you hold some note like up on the keyboard and then you play other notes like I think it's a mechanical thing and they emulate it. You get all these other sounds show up suddenly. Like I forget what, like crosstalk, or I forget what they call it, but it's sounds good.
Neat.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it might be a
Yeah.
crosstalk thing. Well, classic instrument. Well, yeah, I think we will dedicate a couple of webinars to going through this list and different tricky things that you can do with it. It's just so many useful features just there, and that's just the input filters. It's like this program is amazing. Okay.
The documentation on the filters got updated recently.
Oh, it did? Good.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I needed it, so I took notes and shared it with Brad. So if there are any mistakes, blame it on me. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I think we probably better call it pretty soon, because we have. I did set it for an hour and a half, hour 15 minutes. It says it gives us a little bit of time if anyone's got some last minute questions or anything.
I just want to comment. It works incredibly well. Your setup, like it sounds good, and the way you jump between the screen and the and back and forth, it's really works well.
Well, I learned from the best. I like I said, I use Digital Performer, and Motu has been doing weekly webinars since April using this exact approach, where they're showing Digital Performer, of course, via Zoom and doing screen shares. But
Right.
and being able to involve the audience, unmute people, it's just amazing. It's fantastic. That's why I went with Zoom and not just doing a streamed webinar on YouTube. I didn't. That's no interaction at all other than the comments section. And here you do have comments as well. So people can making comments if I have to mute people, like, because it gets too rowdy, you guys, and then you can have comments coming in and be responding to comments too. At the Motu thing, we got a second person. We got Matt does the presentation, and then Adam and he is kind of manning the controls to mute and unmute people, and he watches the chat to see if people are typing questions into the chat.
Yeah, the chat is a good idea if it gets bigger.
Yeah. And but at this point, we don't have to worry about it. I think the entire community actually, Cantabile, is never going to be more than 20, 30 people involved in one of these things at a time. But you never know. Wouldn't it be great if, because of these webinars going up on YouTube, that it suddenly attracts a whole bunch of sane people and they start enjoying this program? It can do so much. I'm going to be doing a show on Sunday, starting this coming Sunday at 7. This show, I usually, my usual YouTube channel fare is typically free software that people can get started with and be creative and become, content creators. So I had a whole bunch on this voice meter program and various other things, OBS and graphics programs. But since there's the Cantabile Lite is a really very powerful little thing. I mean, even if you don't have set lists and all that, you can just load in a song. Just takes a little longer.
I did open mics with Light for like a whole year.
Huh?
Where I just
Oh, you did?
keyboard and a laptop and Light and then I had I forget how I did. I just had it where I just went from one song to another, and that changed my patches or whatever. I forget how I did it.
Yeah, you probably just loaded a song.
Yeah, I just had it like it was a song, and then just to move through, I think I loaded up all the different sounds I was going to use, and then inside that song, maybe I forget. I think I just changed patch, or I don't even remember because it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But then I finally said, "This is useful software. I gotta buy it."
It sure is.
I bought it, and I bought the next version up, the middle one,
Mm-hmm.
and I only lasted a month on that one because it got so confusing. Like if somebody came on the forum and said, "Oh, you can do this," and then I'd try it, and I'm like, I don't know if this isn't working because I'm not on Performer or because I don't know what I'm doing here, and so I just got Performer, so I didn't have to.
That's exactly my problem. That's exactly my problem. I am on solo now, and I'm envious of all these people using link directs and states and so on. And I think I will jump.
Performer is worth it.
Well, look at Performer is worth it, but I still think we really should. My original thought was maybe do the Sunday show featuring only the Light capabilities, and then do Monday possibly just Solo's capabilities up to and through Solo's abilities, and then on Wednesdays do the Performer version where we go full blown and really blow out the house, right? And that would be really cool because then everybody owning all three versions would have a show that's dedicated to all stuff that they can do, that they can actually do on their machine. So I got to...
Those open mics that I went to, other keyboard players would sit and play at the setup that I brought in, and they all walked away saying, I would have never thought of using a laptop and VSTs that they have at home and using Reaper or whatever. They were like, I never thought I would do that in front of a crowd, but now I've seen that it's possible and it works.
Yeah, it sure is. And,
yeah.
Well, amazingly,
sorry, people, I have to go. I have to go.
Oh, that's right, you do.
My wife.
That's right.
See you again next time.
And, okay, I think when you signed up, when you signed up, you ended up on a mailing list at my school, so I'll mail everybody too, if that's okay with you all.
In any case, I am on the forum, so I can check.
And I'll put up the schedule earlier on the forum with the links, so you can register earlier.
Okay, so thank you so much
for
this time, and see you again. So.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I need to, Terry, I do need to mention that I had trouble getting in because I originally clicked go like half an hour early, and it got to the point where it just said waiting for the host or whatever it is, did a timeout, and then it just said it was waiting for you.
Yeah.
After 10 minutes, I realized something was wrong. I had to back out and then rejoin, and then I came in.
Okay.
That happened to me also. I went about 10 minutes and I was like, hey, it must be on.
It must
And
be
so
because I didn't join until just before it.
and then I hit refresh and then it worked.
Okay. Well, that gives
Just
me
went
a
right
tip
into the meeting.
that I should start the
Yeah.
webinar a half hour early, and or someone should. What we do with the Motu webinars is it starts at quarter after, and then Matt comes in at about 25 after. But we've actually got the thing rolling at quarter after. So
Yeah, you could just play some music or something.
yes. All right, great. Well, I think we're probably about to
All
be
right.
shut off. I'll make it for more than an hour and a half next, hour 15 minutes. I'll go for an hour and a half because I can see how these can easily spill over. It doesn't matter if I use a little extra time. So, and these are recorded with the stereo on my OBS on the second computer because I got a capture card and stereo out over that. So the problem with Zoom is it only records. If you use Zoom's recorder, it only records mono. So. All right. Well, I'm doing another one on Wednesday, and so Wednesday I'll be probably a little more organized. But I was rushing to get everything in because I'm also developing a website for someone who needs to get a deadline and freaking out. Um, so anyway, yeah, I'll get started actually right after I shut down here and have Wednesdays all prepared, and that way I'll be able to put a list up of what we'll be discussing. But I like the idea of doing some solo capabilities things. I'll have to get a license, temp license from from Brad, so I have solo just for the presentations. He gave me one before, and then I never followed through and did any recordings. But I like the webinar thing. It's more my style than sitting in front of the camera and just doing recordings for some reason. Oh, that's right. I'm performing, right? It's a gig. Okay, take care, everyone. I'll hopefully see you Wednesday.
Thanks, Jerry.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.